Have you ever had a moment in D&D, whether you were a player or the DM, where you were frozen with indecision? I have, and I'd almost be willing to bet $1 you have too. Well, there are some people who have the personality type to never question or doubt their decision, and they just boldly go forward, always confident they're doing the right thing. But for the other 98% of us, there are definitely times in the game of D&D when we suffer from choice paralysis. I'm going to talk about 3 types of choice paralysis that afflict D&D players, and the 3 types that afflict DMs. Most of my examples in this video share something in common: fear of making the wrong choice. But another one has more to do with the pursuit of perfection when the option of good enough is staring you right in the face. Before we get into that, why not click the like button and subscribe to the channel to let me know you dig this kind of content? Otherwise, I may get the wrong idea and start making videos about esoteric D&D errata that nobody cares about. And what kind of fun would that be? The first of 3 examples of D&D player choice paralysis has to do with something that happens before the game. It's time to create a character, and you get a bad case of blank character sheet syndrome. You flip through the player's handbook and review the different ancestries and classes, and like that meme where the math symbols are floating around in space like Greek mosquitoes, your mind spins around all the possible options and never seems to make up its mind. Okay, that didn't come out right, but you know what I mean. Picking your class and ancestry combination is probably the most frequent example of choice paralysis experienced when creating a new character, with choosing how to allocate your 6 ability scores being a close second. If you're a fighter, it's easy. Dump the biggest score in strength and your second biggest in dex and move on. But if you're a bard or ranger or some other versatile class, it can be a challenge figuring out which stat gets which score. I wish I had some really good advice for how to overcome this, but I don't. All I have is sympathy and the explanation that it's all right. You'll get through this. When you are creating a spellcaster type of character, you can experience yet another type of choice paralysis. This comes up when trying to pick the spells your character takes with them at the beginning of an adventure. It's like first-level wizards wondering if they should take sleep or magic missile. I've seen newbie players opt for some pretty bizarre choices in their first and only spell, but I try as a DM to guide them in a more useful direction. Admittedly, I know what kind of situations are likely to come up in the adventure, so it's kind of like insider trading. When the DM asks, "Are you really sure you want to take comprehend languages?" you've got a pretty good indicator there won't be any unusual languages you'll need to comprehend. The most common example of player choice paralysis I've seen takes place during the game and impacts all classes. It's that situation where combat has begun and you're frozen with trying to decide what to do during your turn in the round. The DM says, "It's your turn," and now you've got a half dozen people staring at you and their headlights are on bright. You've either got a selection of movement options, weapon choices, which monster to attack, or a selection of spells to cast, and you can't decide. This one is a classic example of the fear people have of making the wrong decision. Combat can be hard, especially when the party's hit points are low, but ironically, that can actually make decisions slightly easier, especially if you have fewer spells to choose from, or you're all out of arrows and the only real choice you have is to either bash the dragon again with your mace or cast Cure Light Wounds on the wounded barbarian or yourself. Crap, there's another choice to make. Now that I've covered 3 examples of choice paralysis faced by players, is there an example you've experienced as a player that I didn't cover? Be sure to share it in the comments below. Choice paralysis is a very real issue for DMs too. Like character creation for players, the first example occurs before the game. This is more of an issue where a DM doesn't know when to stop than it is about being unable to decide between multiple options. There are a lot of DMs who will spend weeks or even months with world building and prep, sometimes going down to the smallest level of detail, without knowing when enough is enough. I've done this many times during my career as a DM, but I will provide a caveat that over-prep isn't necessarily a bad thing if 2 conditions exist. First, the DM is doing it because they enjoy it. Prep is a joy for many DMs, and every minute spent doing it, no matter how detailed, is for fun. Second, the DM does it with full understanding and acknowledgement that only a small percentage of what they create will ever be discovered by the players. In fact, I've learned that in my career as a DM, only about 30% of what I create, on average, gets explored. If that seems low to you, I've got another video that talks about how to mine that other 70% so your prep time isn't wasted. Check it out. I've seen other DMs fret over how to structure an encounter so that it's challenging for the players without being too easy or too difficult. I used to worry about this issue a bit more back in the day than I do now, because I've learned some ways to dynamically adjust the combat as it's happening. Regardless, the fear of a TPK can make DMs design encounters that are too weak, and I've seen DMs create encounters that start wiping out player characters one per round because they underestimated the strength of the monsters. This one isn't so much choice paralysis as anxiety about outcomes, but that paralysis can definitely come into play during the design phase, more so than during the combat itself. This last example of choice paralysis for DMs is by far the most common. It's that old chestnut, what am I going to run during tonight's session? This generally applies to encounters and session level choices, not adventure level or campaign level choices. I face this all the time, even today, and it comes down to the anxiety that the players won't have a good time. What I've realized, though, is that the players always have a good time to one degree or another because they enjoy what you present to them without ever having knowledge or awareness of the ideas you discarded or postponed. Plus, and here's a little insider secret about smart DMs that players should turn away and ignore. A good DM preps it all, even if it's just in brief outline format, and keeps track of what they use and what is still in their back pocket. They know that if they can't decide between 3 different adventure choices, they can just pick one, knowing the other 2 can always be used down the road. If you're a DM, what examples of choice paralysis do you suffer from? And perhaps most importantly, how do you deal with it? Be sure to leave a comment. Now, back to choices. In the Rush song Free Will, Neil Peart's lyrics tell us, even if you choose not to decide, you still have made a choice. And the cool thing is, pretty much no matter what choice you go with, you will almost always have the opportunity to use your other options later on. I hope this video made you smile and hopefully eased some of your paralysis anxiety. As always, have fun, stay cool, and keep your dice rolling.